Right, good morning everybody and welcome to the Dorset LAF. I will go to agenda item 1, which welcome apologies and declaration of interests. Item 2, minutes of the last meeting. Have I got democratic support online?
It does look like Gemma's there.
Sorry, I didn't really understand from democratic support, but I'm online if you mean me.
Okay, right. Do you have any apologies?
Yeah, so I've received apologies from Jim, Amanda Walworth, Councillor Hadley, and Russell Goff today.
Right. Thank you very much, Gemma. Minutes of the last meeting, I will take as read. I'm happy to move from the chair. Do I have a seconder?
Yes.
Janet, thank you. All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? That's unanimous. The third item is the Dorset Council Green Space Management and Maintenance Team. Russell is Paul.
Simon and Andy Hadley as local authority officers.
Paul, say again.
So, both Simon and Andy Hadley, although they happen to be councillors, they are nevertheless appointed members of the forum, and they should therefore be listed over in the left-hand column rather than the right-hand column, which point out on a mate.
Right. I see what you're saying. So if we could do that for the next set of minutes and agendas on, please, Gemma. Thank you.
Right.
Right. Do we have Russell online?
I thought you said his apologies.
Right. Well, I will skip item 3 and come back to it when we have Graham, and go on to item 4.
Could we pick up a couple of matters arising?
Yes, certainly.
Before we move on.
Yeah.
Towards the top of page 5, there's a mention that RG is working with National Highways on rights-of-way severance, which is a very long-standing issue. Would that be covered in the council's report, or do we need to take that separately?
Really, we need some input on that, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have to come back to that when we have Graham.
Well, okay, right.
Yeah. Okay.
And the other thing was on the very last page, there was this mention of Dawn Raymond's email address appears to be a black hole. And I am still getting bounces from it. And surely somebody somewhere can get in touch with her and get us an up-to-date address.
I don't have any contact details for her other than the email address. I don't know if Gemma, do you have any contact details for Dawn?
No, I don't.
No. So the answer to that would be, it's got to be for her to contact us, because we haven't held anything because of GDPR. So we're slightly.
Well, Chairman, surely Dorset Council has got all of our application forms from when we joined somewhere. So that must have a postal address. So surely the officers are able to access that and make contact with her, because there are two people whose email address is now bounced. I've forgotten who the other one is. I haven't got it in front of me, but there are two email addresses that bounce when you do reply all now. Can I write to Graham about it and spell that out? Yeah, right. Graham, the problem is that there are a couple of people who are on the group email, and when you do reply all, you get bounced back, and we don't know how to get in contact with those two people to find out. So yeah, Tara would have had them when we were last appointed. So somewhere in Dorset Council they must be. I'm sorry to put something else on you, but I'll put it in writing to you so you can see it.
Okay. Graham, as Russ listened here this morning, are you happy to give a Dorset Council Green Space Management and Maintenance report, please?
Yes. And I suppose in terms of a report, we're still in the midst of the restructure and wanting or waiting for those further up chain to decide on what our structure is due to be. Obviously, the new financial year has rolled around, so we are just in the midst of sorting everything out for that. And making sure that we've got contracts in place for kind of more capital works, maintenance works and what have you. We are, and I certainly know that Russ has penciled in as soon as the elections are over to really get his head down with topping and tailing the ROIP. Staffing is just about to increase by the employment of at least 8 level 4 apprentices, which we hope to have in post by mid-May. And a couple of other full-time positions as well, one within the West team and one in the Purbeck team, where a member of staff has recently vacated and moved to the RSPB. I don't have any stats, unfortunately. The Piddle Path, I think, is on the agenda for a little while's time. No update on Dark Knoll other than what you already know, Philip. And I think that is about all I can give at the moment.
Okay. For the uninitiated, you talked about an increased staff level 4 apprentices. What actually will they be doing?
They'll be working within our area and country park teams, 6 for the areas and 2 for the country parks, doing what the full-time staff do, as well as doing an apprenticeship level 4 countryside ranger qualification. So there'll be, it's not quite day release as in how the old apprenticeships used to be. It's more like once a month. We kind of joined up with not Kingston Moors, Barshalt College, just near Winchester, to deliver the course. So they would be full-time but fixed-term contract members of staff, effectively, on a qualification, as well as working and learning the role of a countryside ranger.
Okay, so they'd be working on the ground, so we'd have hopefully an increase in capacity for fault rectification qualification.
Indeed. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have over the past few years, sorry, because we've always had apprentices past 15, 16 years, but on a level 2 course, which was run through Kingston Moorwood. Kingston Moorwood stopped doing apprenticeships, so we had to kind of change our model, and we've chosen to go with a level 4 qualification to keep those new members of staff for 2 years instead of 1 year or 18 months, which is the case of the level 2.
Can you tell us what's happening with Dorset Explorer?
That's why dear Mr. Quincy is here.
So what do you want to know, really, is the question.
Any chance of getting the audit survey back on it?
Yeah, so on the new one, we have the OS Leisure base map stack, which goes down to 1 to 25k and then stops. The reason for that change is that we now take all that data direct from Ordnance Survey, whereas we used to have to manage it in-house, which meant it went out of date quite quickly. It would often be out of date by over a year. We now get that direct, so it means it's a lot more up to date, but they don't provide something that goes from all the way through down to like the really zoomed in levels. So you're talking about the new one or the old one? The green Dorset Explorer or the blue Dorset Explorer is the easy way to put it.
I prefer the old Dorset Explorer. It was.
Yeah, so that one should be that one was removed, I think, because we just can't manage it in the old one anymore. That's the reason we're moving to a new one. It's just too difficult to maintain. So your OS Leisure base maps are on the new one, and I would encourage you to move over to it because we will be shutting that down within a couple of months. And if there are issues with the new one that makes you not want to use it, let us know. There's feedback links. We do reply to them. We do look at them. We'll try and do whatever we can to help.
Notice on the new one that where powers are being wrongly signed, and the wrong path is shown as well as the definitive path. Does this mean that there's an ambition to put the new paths on the definitive map?
I'm not sure about that. The data we have for the rights of way layer is the same as in the old one. Nothing changed in that regard, so I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
When they've been signed off offline.
Where they've been signed offline.
Yes.
I appreciate that has happened, but that wouldn't necessarily translate to what is on Dorset Explorer, though. There's lots of walked routes on Dorset on Ordnance Survey, where they basically taken an aerial photograph of a field, for example, and they can see a walked line through it, which is different to the definitive line. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Well, and the walk line has been signed as if a footpath by the rights of way team, sometimes for many years. So is there any ambition to add these to the definitive map?
I wouldn't have thought so. No, we've got enough.
Get the assignment corrected then.
Absolutely, yeah. And if those jobs are raised, then we'll get to them in the fullness of time, I guess. Yeah.
They have a list.
Simon, you wanted to come in.
Yes, just a couple of points following on from your comments. Indeed, other people's comments. Question of severance, whether at Hanbury, Monkey's Jump, the Chiddock Bridport Trailway. Can you give us updates on severance issues? That was my first question. My second one, you may not know the answer. We will have noted apprentices going to Winchester. With the proposed merger of Kingston Moorwood and Weymouth College, will there still be discussions about the possibility of apprentices in the future actually going to college somewhat closer to home?
Question 2, if I may, first of all, yes. I mean, I'm the apprentice lead for our service, so I do know a bit about the proposed merger between Kingston Morwood and Weymouth. Yes, we would be going back to them as and when, but obviously they've got to offer the courses that we want. So they are, I believe, at the moment only looking at offering the level 2 countryside worker qualification rather than the level 4 countryside ranger qualification. At which point, yes, we would be going back to them because it's the college of choice. It would be absolutely, but at the moment they're not. So we kind of have to go with wherever we can go. Question 1, severance. Obviously, the whole severance issue is going to be dealt with in the ROIT, and the particular issues with Monkey's Jump and the Chiddock. I don't know exactly whereabouts you mean. They're probably what are they now? National highways type issues, and so a fair bit of consultation will be needed with them as well as to how the rights of way are no longer severed. Yeah, we are certainly looking at all of those kind of issues. Absolutely.
Hi, you mentioned the ROIP and said that somebody would be addressing this after the May elections. So is there a new timetable when the ROIP will be coming to the LAF and when you eventually plan to actually roll it out and for it to be adopted?
Yeah, I'll have to defer to Russ for timescales because it's very much in his court. So I can't give you any definitives on that.
Okay. We were led to believe it was ready to go and was going to be presented to members straight after the elections in May.
That may well be the case. I haven't actually spoken to Russ about it for a little while, but if that's what he's intimated, then
Yeah.
Then
okay.
Yeah. But I don't know any of the details other than that, unfortunately.
Thank you. Paul.
On the rights of way improvement plan, the LAF is a statutory consultee, and we are required to be involved with the process long before it becomes a tablet of stone. And your words rather lean towards the tablet of stone end of the situation. That's the way they came across anyway. So we do need to see it as soon as possible, and whilst there is some flexibility in it, looking on the council's website as of yesterday, it talks about the new ROIP starting in 2025, which, if that's the case, that would mean Dorset has been without a lawful ROIP for 4 years now, which really is appalling, quite frankly. But anyway, if you could sort of take that message back, because one of the original reasons for creating LAFs was to help with ROIPs. And as of right now, we just cannot discharge that duty. So that was one thing. On the severance issue, must be 7 or 8 years ago now, we picked up on something about, I think it was Highways England in those days, had a piggy bank for dealing with these severance issues. And so we did a piece of work which identified getting on for 12 points where, as the A35 and the A31 make their way east-west, they chop some very valuable north-south bridleways into two, and even pedestrians in the season would struggle to get across, and getting across on a JJ is just suicidal. And so we produced this list, which Tara was supposed to be sending to Highways England. We've had absolutely zero feedback on that. But there's no doubt you can identify something like a dozen points where what ought to be a north-south through route is just two dead ends meeting at the A35. And so for us to have an update on that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly try and track that document down. It's easy enough to identify on a map, really, without necessarily trawling back through Tara's archives, I suppose. Where she got to with that, I've got no idea. And whether it was ever presented to Highways England, I really don't know.
I could probably dig out a copy of what you were saying to say it was years ago now, and I'm quite sure that the piggy bank that Highways England had will have been used up by now. But nevertheless, it is a shame that what are potentially some very valuable north-south through routes are just unusable because of the way the intersection has been managed. So I could find you the earlier letter if you want. Okay, right. And on the agenda here, it mentions the Hounds-Toot Cliff Fall diversion, which triggered a thought process in my mind that one of the very few tangible benefits of the England Coast Path project is it did introduce this concept of rollback margin. And just purely out of interest, I'm just interested to know how the rollback provision is actually working out in practice. Whether this is an example of it, I don't know.
Being a North Dorset boy, I don't get involved with too much coastal stuff until it rolls all the way back to Blandford. So I can't really add too much to that. I'm afraid I don't know any of the details on that one. You can direct an email to a specific officer in that area. What was the location again? I beg your pardon. Did you say it was Weymouth?
The agenda mentions Hounds-Toot Cliff.
Ah, okay. So that's.
But there has also been some very substantial erosion recently around West Bay.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that'll be within their area.
I think Janet can help you.
Oh,
here,
good.
Graham. The hands.
Yes, with my Ramblers hat on, we were in contact with, is it Katie in that sector? Yeah, with Katie Black, who's the ranger in that part of Dorset. And the reason that we contacted her was that there has been a cliff fall at Hounds-Toot on the coast path, and it necessitated a really, really long inland diversion. And Katie's reply to Rambler's query was that they are working with Natural England and the landowner to sort it out as quickly as possible, and that rollback is being used to facilitate that. So that was a month or so ago we had that exchange, I think. But yes, she assured us that rollback was being used and it was going to be helpful in resolving that, because it really is a long diversion. You'll lose sight of the sea, not as far as Blandford, but it is a long way inland because there's just no alternative. And there was a temporary traffic regulation order on it, obviously to close it because it was too dangerous to use because it was so close to the sea and the cliffs.
Simon.
Following on from those very well-made comments a few minutes ago, I note that we do have the benefit of Vanessa Penny online, and the fact that we've had discussions about severance issues, and clearly I would like to hear about current legal issues revolving around lack of safe equestrian provision for crossing our main roads, and also issues to assist disabled people. And I don't know if Vanessa Penny would like to make some comments in the absence of Philip Criver.
Vanessa, please come online.
Hello. Yeah, so severance obviously is a massive issue, and has been for many years, as we know. It hasn't reached the definitive map team yet. We would deal with any legal paperwork and processes regarding that, but in the first instance, we need to work with green space colleagues in the ranger team to actually work out where the issues are, what we need to put in place to resolve the issues, and if new definitive rights of way are required or diversions are required, then obviously that would come to us in the definitive map team. But until that time, we don't have the capacity to go out there and find these routes, I'm afraid. It's sort of, we're a little bit further down the process. So I can't really give you any more information than that at the moment, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. If I could just return to one issue you brought up at the beginning, and that's we've got 18 bridges down with a 4-year backlog, and we can do 4 bridges this year. Are the council doing any horizon scanning to see what bridges are likely to fail in the next, say, 12, 18 months? Because my concern is that if we're losing rights away for 4 years plus, and if we have a number of bridges that are close to becoming, we need to close these paths, we're going to have a massive backlog and not the substantial funds needed to repair them in sufficient time. So could you elaborate a little bit more on that, please? Thanks, Graham.
I can, yeah. So to go back right to the very beginning, we get £160,000 from the highways local transport plan improvements pot every year, specifically for repairing bridges on our rights of way network. We do obviously when the problem reports come in for a bridge, we get out there and assess it, make temporary repairs if we can, and then basically add it to a list if it's necessary for full replacement. And the past couple of years, we have had a number of bridleway bridges go. So that led us to do a full survey of our bridleway bridges last year, where it was basically highlighted that if we were to have all of our bridleway bridges on a replacement schedule, it would take 5 years and cost just over £1 million, and that's to upgrade the specification from many which are still timber decked and timber beamed to steel beamed with kind of a recycled plastic, a GRP, a glass reinforced plastic type, which would far outlive timber. And like I say, so we that was costed out at being just over £1 million to replace over 5 years. And so we put in a bid to the capital projects part of Dorset Council, which unfortunately wasn't successful. So all of those bridges that were highlighted have then now been returned to our regular payment schedule, or not payment schedule, you know what I mean, the through the LTP pot to get replaced. Roughly right over the county, this is just off the top of my head really, there's probably about 60 bridges which are being identified which need replacing. The pot of cash that we've got allows each area to roughly do 4 to 5 bridges a year. Some are more expensive. For example, a single bridge could cost £20,000, or it might just cost £6,000. It all depends on whether it's a big old bridleway bridge over a main river somewhere, or a footbridge over a ditch in Winterbourne's Elston. So it all depends. And obviously we get contractors to do all of these works. We make the minor repairs ourselves, but most of the big replacement works are all done by contractors. So our bridleway bridges specifically have been added to the council's risk register, so they are aware that it is a potential large claim against the council if we can't do anything about it. And currently we've just been advised to seek other sources of funding, of which there aren't really many for doing what is effectively a core function of the council and our responsibility. So yeah, so the figures that you said a minute ago, they were just for North Dorset, and I've got around about 18 bridges in my North Dorset area which I know need replacing, and dividing that budget up between the areas, I can do 4, maybe 5 of those bridges, and the others, you know, the other 14 or so, we'll have to wait till next year, and then we'll rise to the top. Sorry, then all the time more are coming in underneath. That
was my point. Yeah. Dennis.
Just wondered whether it was worth passing your list. I mean, it sounds good that you've done all the reviews back to the British Horse Society, the Ramblers Association, to actually do some prioritisation for you, so that at least we know which ones are most used and most critical to routes, because I'm sure we could do that at a local level. The other thing is that, bearing in mind they'll go across rivers, it might be also worth putting them to catchment partnership, because there may be changes to those rivers, and it would be a pity to spend a lot of money on something that's about to get bypassed or whatever. So if we've got a wait time, could we use that positively to help you prioritise?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Assure me that the spec's been updated so that the bridges will be DDA compliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They should all be level, should have no steps.
Wide enough.
And absolutely
And,
wide.
I mean,
enough. Certainly wide enough.
One certainly got put in about 2.5 years ago that A has steps and B is not wide enough.
Okay.
And so
Alrighty.
a whole new bridge has gone in, which I don't know how much it cost, but a lot of money, which isn't fit for the purpose that it should be.
Right. Fair enough. Well, I apologise for that. Definitely. I mean, I suppose it's taken on a location by location basis as much as anything. Not that it should be, but it possibly is,
Yes,
in terms of creating a ramp onto it. Because obviously we always have to make sure that they are raised a little higher than the old, just to keep our flood management teams happy. But yeah, they should always be very much wide enough, no doubt about that, and accessible.
Yeah, I mean the young man that I spoke to on the phone, whose name I can't remember, told me that he'd created the bridge had been created to spec, and that the specs were what they were. So I was told that the specs would actually change. So hopefully they have.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm aware, they are fully compliant, but I will check. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, if there are no further questions for Graham, I'll move on to the next agenda item, having noted the points made. And if I could go to item 4, which is the BCP Council Public Rights of Way update, with Philip Elias and Ellen House. If you're both online, yes, I can see you. Floor's yours.
Alrighty, can you hear me?
Hearing you clearly.
Oh, fantastic. All right, just a slightly briefer update than before, just to let you know some of the progress which has been going on some of the items. Let's dive right into it then. I think the most interesting item we've been talking about for past, it's actually adding up into the years now, is the River Avon, down at the footpaths 16 and 17 between Christchurch and Burton. I think it's about the Avon Valley. It is still suffering from some terrible water, well, not just water damage, it is essentially underwater, the Avon Valley path. However, we've been sort of pressing forward against sort of the regulation aspects, because what we've found is that many of our intended sort of repairs, for example, repairing the sheet piling along the river or installing bridge structures which have been failing, have been somewhat impeded by the knowledge that Natural England would not be particularly permissive to the reinstallation of those structures. So what I did was I contacted the MP for Christchurch, Sir Christopher Chope, and recommended that he would sort of pursue it via his angle, see whether he could get a meeting. And indeed, that appears to have succeeded in moving things along a little bit. There was a meeting between Sir Christopher Chope, Robbie Moore here, MP Minister for Water and Rural Growth, Jim Flory, who's the Area Environment Manager of the Environment Agency, and Tom Lord, who's the Manager of the Wessex area for Natural England, regarding the River Avon. Now, I'm not privy to the content of that meeting. Would have loved to have listened in on that. But the arising effect is that I do have a meeting at the end of this week with Jim and Tom of Environment Agency and Natural England. It's apparently only 30 minutes long, so I don't know whether it's going to be good news or bad news, but the fact that they are talking to us whatsoever, I think is probably good news. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what they have to say about this, and hopefully we're going to be able to devise a strategy for moving this thing along, and it isn't going to be purely sort of regulatory aspects which are going to be stopping us from making progress on reconnecting this path, because I know it's very much in demand. It's a very popular path. It's a strategic one which is promoted. So yeah, I'm going to strike that up as a bit of good news, maybe. Just a little diagram there to remind you where the paths are and the current sort of breaches of the river and the flooding aspects were sort of disconnected at across two of the paths there. We also have been sort of going out and trying to survey the land to try and see whether there would be sort of an opportunity for, let me get my magic laser pointer out here, whether we could actually sort of do a bit of a diversion maybe behind this tree line here and then going back up, because it appears as though the water is sort of more contained along some channels here, which might mean that we could actually sort of do a diversion and restore access this way. But let's see how this meeting with Natural England and the Environment Agency pans out, and I'll let you all know, hopefully, at the next meeting of DLAF that we've got some splendid news that it's all systems go, and all we have to do is just get the money together and just get on with it. So that is that item. I don't know if there are any questions. Sure.
I think I think you can tell Sir Christopher the LAF would be very interested in an update before the next meeting, because it's imperative we do get this crossing sorted out sooner rather than later.
Yes, yes. I will let you know.
Thank you.
By way of email before the next meeting. And yeah, hopefully good news on that. Let's see. Okay, next item. Over at Parley Golf. I recall telling you about the current situations we've been having with this one, in the sense that it was sort of illegally diverted in 2020. And we've been seeking to normalize and legalize this diverted path. it's getting maybe a little bit more awkward as time goes on, because the way in which it was intended to be sort of resolved by Harley Golf Centre was the submission of a planning application, which would have formed some bunding, which was intended to sort of screen some of the local houses from the light pollution which comes from the beaming bright lights in the driving range. And the fact is, it appears as though there may be some difficulties that they're having with trying to actually get that planning application through. I don't know the ultimate result for that, but essentially the problem is that they need to come up with sort of flood mitigation strategies, because the creation of bunding there would potentially displace water, and I think they're struggling to sort of come up with a solution for that. So ultimately, we don't actually fully know as to what the result will be here, but if it appears as though they're sort of on a bit of a back foot on it, and it looks as though that they are, then I think that we are going to push a little bit harder for potentially the creation of a new public footpath, where originally we said that it would be sort of permissive. We don't know how sort of successful such a request would be, but the fact is, when you look at sort of how the path was originally, I think it used to have sort of a more verdant environ, and it was more screened. Whereas now, if they're unable to put in the bunding, then that makes us wonder sort of what the future is going to be for this path. We're either going to be sort of running a path next to an unscreened, relatively unscreened driving range, which is sort of less pleasant. But again, we'll keep you updated on that. It might even mean that a full enforcement action against this illegal diversion might end up having to precipitate. That would be enormously costly to have to settle that back. So it makes me wonder as to whether they would be sort of more permissive with our asks as a result of that. So we'll see how that goes, but we don't have a confirmation either way with the planning application. Okay, so an interesting one, nothing which is going to be unfamiliar to yourselves, the Stour Valley project, but there is sort of some movement on the Stour Valley project by way of the National Trust. We've been meeting with the project leader, Catherine Church, the National Trust, and we had the meeting was between ourselves and Dorset and Catherine Church. So the idea is, if you're not immediately familiar, the idea is to create, it was originally called sort of the Stour Valley Park, but the idea is a contiguous sort of walking, sometimes riding area, which connects up the whole of the River Stour area. It's got its own very splendid website, if you're not already familiar, but seeing as we're all joint partners in this, you will no doubt be completely familiar with this. But yeah, it's been good to meet with Catherine, who seems very excited and extremely interested in sort of coordinating some progress on this. So the previous meeting we had, talking about sort of connectivity and accessibility issues, a good place to start, and we're sort of pulling that together into our GIS, and we're going to be taking that further. On the 17th, there's going to be another meeting with Dorset, BCP, and Catherine again, and we're going to be looking at sort of the boundary issues, sort of how we can sort of connect between the authorities, resolving some of the connection issues. So that's going to be really good to make some progress, not for it to just be a sort of a project which is sort of in mind, for something which tangible progress is being made. So yes, next meeting, 17th of April. Looking forward to it. And we should be able to get some materials together after that. I don't know, we can have a discussion about sort of how that sort of gets maybe published eventually, perhaps on the Stour Valley Park website. But Catherine has said she would be interested in approaching the forum, perhaps with giving her own presentation on her interest and angle on sort of driving these things forward. So I'll have to provide the contact details there, and Catherine will be no doubt very eager to come along to the next DLAF meeting and provide a presentation on that.
We'd welcome that actually, Pip, because I had some input into the original report, or the preamble before the report, the consultation stage, where a number of issues were raised about equestrians and also trying to get across the river, which has been a great bugbear for many, many years, where a bridge has been promised and not come forward due to funding. But when the report was actually issued, all the items referring to equestrian use were disappeared off it, and I raised it with the people that produced the report, and they said, well, we sent the report in, and the final version of the report was down to the actual team, which was, from my part, from the equestrian, was very disappointing that those issues were not captured in the final report. So it'll be very interesting to meet Catherine at the next meeting. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Sorry to hear about that. But at least from my perspective, when we've been pursuing, for example, the bridge between Red Hill over the River Stour, we have pressed for that particular bridge to be equestrian friendly. It is intended to be designed with that specific use in mind. So although, yes, it's disappointing that those references have been left out of written materials, I can at least say that from our angle, we are still pressing for providing links within the context of developing the Stour Valley project. Okay. Okay, good, right. So yeah, just a quick update then on capital works, now commencing, and that was April. So Longfleet Drive is our one of our main spends, due to the terrible decline. No doubt Dorset again are going to be experiencing some terrible problems with the weather, although all the paths really have just suffered so much. I think we have record-breaking terrible weather, and as a result, things which looked as though they're going to be sort of a medium spend are looking as though they're going to be sort of maybe even higher spends, but that's okay, because quite a lot of the Longfleet Drive program, I think, was sort of focused on the implementation of sort of new drainage and things. So it's good in a way that we have had this weather, so we can see the path at its worst, so we can get the sort of the quotes and the work drawn up for making sure that it's going to be future-proof. Whatever we do install there, it's going to be installed and made ready for an expected continuation of bad weather like this every winter. Also, we are looking at particular schools, Highcliffe School and other schools in the area around Lilliput. We are making sure that paths which have declined in quality affecting school children are prioritised. So we've been having a look at those. We're also going to be looking at the removal of obstructing cycle barriers, which I know we've had an ongoing sort of program whereby we're removing these staggered barriers in batches. We found that they are largely obstructive and don't really help from any real safety perspective. So particularly around schools, we're going to be taking a look at removing sort of obstructive cycle barriers, and then that will sort of help with promoting more sustainable choices of travel. What else we got here? East Southbourne, Clacton, footpath 127, replacement gate. We're looking at all kinds of things really. Looking at the, let's continue here. Castleman Trailway. We are looking at, we've got a meeting booked for the 29th with yourself, Phil. Going to see what I can bring along Gene Heath into this one as well, where we're looking at some access improvements on the Castleman Trailway to make it equestrian friendly. I got some ideas for that one. Iford Lane to Tuckton Bridge, although not strictly a public right of way at all. We are currently progressing, trying to re-implement the link along Iford Lane. It has sort of steadily eroded towards the river. It is actually a part of the Stour Valley Way, even though it's sort of off-road and a bit of a rugged route. We are looking to gather together a scheme of works for re-implementing access along the river. And as part of that, we're going to be looking at the Community Infrastructure Levy Fund, which appears to be an increasingly useful resource for us, considering that I believe the modus operandi for this now is that the funds are sort of shared across the whole of the BCP area rather than being sort of compartmentalized by ward, which means that we can sort of prioritize links which are most needed rather than just whether the pot happens to be most full. So this potentially could be a fantastic way forward for dealing with some of these other projects which fall outside of our capital program. So that is largely our roundup. There was just an additional thing I've been thinking about with regard to our rights of way improvement plan. I'm just looking at some of the items on there, and I'm conscious at least one of these things we're falling behind. It was the walking map. We were intending on producing this new printed sort of walking map, and indeed it's got to really be a cycling and indeed a riding map really to be complete. And what I'm thinking is this: the previous one that we did it was actually just for the Borough of Poole, and it sort of made a little bit more sense for that area, seeing as it was a fair amount smaller, and we could fit on the old town with its own sort of dedicated area. But producing one for the whole of BCP, I'm wondering sort of how sort of practical that is going to be, because I've got another idea, and it's really a question for fine colleagues in Dorset. I'm wondering about how much sort of promotional work do you currently do for Dorset Explorer? Because Dorset Explorer itself is such a fantastic tool. I think on average, probably a hell of a lot more useful and maybe sort of undersold compared to the walking maps. So I'm thinking more and more about that and sort of the use of Dorset Explorer. So what sort of promotional work do you do, Dorset?
Graham, over to you.
None that I'm aware of. Rob?
Yeah, same. We've just relied on kind of word of mouth and placing it in places where it would be useful. So yeah, there's no real specific promotional work we do on it. We have a very small team, so we don't really have capacity to do much beyond build it and run it. But yeah, any places we can put it out there more, we'd be happy to sort of help out.
Okay, well, this sounds like a really fantastic opportunity then, because I think we'd like to get involved in helping to promote this tool. As you say, we try and sort of spread the gospel of Dorset Explorer as much as we can via word of mouth, and people are surprised that it exists. And you know, given the value of it, Ellen and I, whenever we are out on the site, we'll always use Dorset Explorer to make sure we're in the right place and not getting lost. And so I'm just thinking sort of in terms of square meterage of paper used per person who would find either sort of option useful, I'm imagining we could probably get a hell of a lot more reach for a lot less cost by coming up with some promotional leaflets for Dorset Explorer. So I'm going to think about that and make some plans for it. At the moment, we are losing a walking and cycling officer. Richard Ensten is leaving. It might be the case that it's maybe for the best if I wait until a new person there is implemented, or I could have a look at it now. My design skills aren't actually too bad. I might just try sort of maybe drafting something up, or otherwise we can just put it out to a design agency. Maybe there can be a conversation there about sort of joint funding for it. But you know, if the amount of money we sort of put into the walking map was applied to just the promotional leaflets, I think that it could just go so far in its reach and its influence in sort of promoting well, both sort of recreational and sort of business walking, cycling, and riding in BCP and Dorset, really.
Jenny, you just like to jump in.
Yeah, just a question for Pip. I love a map for my walking, but I think anyone that's 20 years younger than me doesn't use a map ever. Everyone uses electronic devices, and I certainly still use my OS online on my phone. And of course, you can create routes on that. Now, has the council looked into how you just create electronic routes and share those? Because I suspect you'll get more of the community accessing that way. Now, obviously, OS is a paid app, and there are others as well. But has it been thought about?
It's not something I've strictly looked into. That is absolutely something that we should be having a look at. I don't know about Dorset, whether they have much interface with the Ordnance Survey and their electronic stuff. I'll hand over to them.
Not really, apart from using their base mapping when we can. We don't really want to do the same thing as OS. You know, that's not really our job. Our job isn't really to be Ordnance Survey for Dorset. And since OS already do something and have a very large scale influence across the whole UK, we probably won't be doing the same things. But there's something in between we could potentially look at, even if it's creating sort of particular layers for particular routes, you know, with other people, then yeah, we can do that. But I don't want to commit to anything at the moment.
I'll just come in on some of the points Pip's been making. The key for us really is about, obviously, the rights of way network is a key plank of our sustainable travel option. So walking, cycling, horse riding, etc. And the key for us is about making sure, I'm sure it's the same for Dorset, is getting the funds in. So we do have the capital pot, which Pip mentioned, that's in the region of 70 to 80,000 per year. And in addition to that, as Pip mentions, we're going down the community infrastructure levy funding route to see if there's an opportunity there as well. And obviously we tap into other schemes, so TCF planning and things like that. We try and make sure the rights of way do well out of it as much as we can. So if there's a highway scheme going on, then we always take the opportunity to try and get a right of way out of it. There's a lot of new housing estates being built in the Canford Magna area. If any of you have been that way, you'll be quite surprised at the amount of housing estates being built quite close to the river around Canford Magna school area. So it's tapping into that as well and making sure we get the rights of way out of that. So Pip and Ellen certainly work hard on that, and Pip and Ellen, they hate me to say it, but they are the rights of way team within my group. So they are the rights of way team, as we don't have the rangers and things like Dorset have, obviously smaller area, and part of that is about closing that loop between us and the maintenance teams. We have highway inspectors that inspect the public highway, but they also do on occasion inspect the public rights of way. But a lot of it is on word of mouth. I think Helen would say is word of mouth, and people like yourselves reporting to BCP and saying there's a problem out on wherever it is, Longfleet Drive or something like that. So lots of challenges ahead, but certainly, as you can see, a lot of new exciting things going on in Stour Valley, Avon River, and getting involved with MPs and others. So hopefully we can keep moving
moving that forward. And with Councillor Hadley as our portfolio holder, certainly promotes rights away, as you know.
Right, Pip. Oh, Paul, you wanted to come in first.
Good morning, Pip. I seem to remember that when you were revising your rights of way improvement plan a couple of years ago, you included in it a suggestion that somebody should be sent out with a video camera to record your various rights of way, so that people who were potentially interested in going for a walk could see on their computers what they were letting themselves in for, which seemed to me to be an absolutely brilliant idea. Has anything actually happened on that?
Oh, we will be looking into the idea of either accomplishing this via as a volunteer scheme, whereby people can go out and start doing this for themselves, really. You can use a mobile phone app, I think it is, Google Maps gives you the ability to take sort of photo spheres, which essentially accomplishes this photo by photo. So we can either do it that way, but the other way that it could be done is if we were to go out with a professional camera, which would be maybe the more expensive way of doing it, but that would in fact guarantee sort of like a higher standard of photography to make sure that the quality is there for the whole of the network. So it is still in the planning stage. It will definitely get done. It remains incredibly useful as an idea. And so, yeah, nothing material yet to show you on that, but one day at some point, hopefully within the next 2 or 3 years, we will begin to see this stuff popping up on Google Maps. So yeah, still remains a key ambition of ours, and it's definitely a must do.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Yes, Jim.
Sorry, I had one comment on the Avon that it mentioned. I liked your optimism. So I don't think it's an easily resolved issue, especially after this year's flooding. But there, something I was asked to do last time was to look at ELMS payments for access. And actually there's some positive news on that, which might be relevant for the Avon, which is that the 2024 ELMS payments have been put forward, and they now include payments for access, permissive and otherwise, for landowners. So that at least gives you some options perhaps around diversions, not least because the River Avon has one of the largest farm clusters in England gathered together to look at funding services. A lot of these are services like carbon or water, but I'm hoping to speak at some stage to one of their members about access and something else. So, and I should see one of them this week. But I think it's a good time to push for diversion, given that this payment now going to come in for landowners.
It's not a massive amount of money, but at least it does oil the wheels, shall we say? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Right. If that's all for Pip and Ellen, I will move on to item 5. I'll take that now, and that is the legal record team definitive map and statement. Over to you, Vanessa, if you're there.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just share my screen here. Right, okay, so just a couple of news items for you here today. Firstly, and this is actually quite a big issue for us at the moment, parish boundary changes. You may or may not be aware that as a result of the community governance review, which went to full council in July 2022, there were several major parish boundary changes within the county which actually took effect on the 1st of this month. Several boundaries are moving and some parishes will disappear completely and be absorbed into adjacent parishes. And this will have a huge impact on our rights of way numbering system. Many paths, and we estimate well over 100, will need to be changed legally, basically. We will need to give them different numbers and we will need to rewrite the definitive statements, and we will then need to notify all the stakeholders accordingly. So this is actually going to be a really big project for us, and it's likely to take several months to complete. The problem is we can't actually start yet, as we don't have sufficiently accurate information regarding the position of the new boundaries. The GIS team are working really hard on this for us, but they're a small team. They've got masses of work to do, and whilst they're doing their best, it's still taking them some time to achieve, not least because I think they weren't actually given the information in good time. So it's been a bit awkward for them. So we're waiting at the moment. It's essentially an administrative process. It's not going to change anything on the ground. It is just numbering and statements and things like that. We've been through all our existing outstanding legal orders, and we don't think any of them are going to be affected. If they are, we are going to have to send them to the planning inspectorate to get them changed, which means we have to go through the whole planning inspectorate submission process and write statements of case and provide all the documents and things like that, because that's the only way they can deal with things. So hopefully we're not going to have to do that for many, if any at all, but this is going to be quite a big deal for us, and it's going to take a lot of our time. And also we're not quite sure yet what impact this will have on the seaside reporting system and the infrastructure records and the maintenance reports. And this is something that once we know where we are, we will need to work with the rangers and the GIS team to try and resolve. So that's sort of looming over us at the moment, I'm afraid, a bit. Second item, latest update from DEFRA on the implementation of the Deregulation Act. Some of you may or may not be aware of this already. In January, DEFRA circulated an update stating that they had put up a submission to ministers outlining their proposed timetable for implementing the right to apply and the reforms. And they are intending to lay the secondary legislation for the right to apply for diversions in June, July, followed by the DMMO reforms in December, and the exceptions regulations in early 2025. Of course, it's likely that the date of a general election could impact these timings, but that's what they were aiming for. And in January, when they released the statement, they were on schedule. Please note, they said to us that these are only the laying dates, and the in-force dates are currently to be confirmed, because they wanted to make sure that they build in sufficient time for applicants, landowners and local authorities to become familiar with the new procedures, and they won't know how much time they'll need until they get there, basically. And they also announced that ministers have decided to bring back the exception for unrecorded historic rights of way in public use, which means the cut-off date won't apply to those routes, and they're intending to lay this as a separate statutory instrument in May. And they were working on the basis that this would provide some reassurance and reduce burdens on local authorities, both before and after the cut-off date. And that update came from Paul Davison, who is the Senior Policy Advisor on Rights of Way Reform in DEFRA. And then again, last month, they provided a further update regarding the issue of exceptions to the cut-off provision. They're still under consideration, and they are still very concerned about routes currently in use, which might inadvertently be deleted. A specific timetable for the other provisions is not available yet, and it was pointed out again because of the elections, this may fog the situation further. The guidance for authorities and applicants is going to be delayed until later in the process, and the ongoing work was in relation to the right to apply for changes to routes. The statutory instruments will include regulations for application forms, amendments to the register of applications, and recovery of costs by parties, and DMMO changes are still due to follow on. It was put to the DEFRA representative that, you know, do they realise that the increased burden that is going to be placed on surveying authorities? And their response was that it is assumed that all provisions will not recognise this additional burden, partly on the basis that whilst they did understand that the provision would result in an increase in work for a short period, a lesser burden is expected after the closure of the definitive map to pre-1949 claims, which is an interesting approach because, as you're aware, we currently have well over 200 applications outstanding, and I don't see how that can possibly be seen as a lesser burden within the foreseeable future, but that's where we stand. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens, and obviously it's all very much hinging on what happens with an election later this year or early next year. And then finally, Kerry left us at the end of last year. We have recruited to replace her, which is brilliant. We did recruit from within the team, however, so we now have to backfill that vacancy, and the recruitment process is underway. So we're still a person down, but hopefully we will get someone very soon. And just moving on to some statistics, looking firstly at DMMOs. We currently have 239 cases not started, which is the same as the last update in November. I will say we have been making progress, but as we start one, another one is coming in, so the figure is actually the same. We have 47 cases in progress, which includes 6 cases currently with the Planning Inspectorate and 25 cases which are in the queue waiting to be submitted. And there are no inquiries or hearings currently scheduled. And then finally, moving on to the public path orders, we have 5 cases not started and 31 in progress, which includes 11 Town and Country Planning Act applications associated with developments. 1 PPO case is currently with the Planning Inspectorate, which is the Dorchester Winterbourne Moncton case, which was submitted in January last year. That's trundling on, and the Planning Inspector have confirmed that it will be determined by written representations, and we've just received the first exchange of statements of case. And there are 2 other PPO cases waiting to go to PINS, 1 in Bedminster and 1 in Thorncombe. And that's it, short and sweet. So are there any questions?
Thank you, Vanessa. Janet's got a question for you first.
Thank you, Vanessa. The work that you've got to do because of the parish boundary changes, are they going to necessitate legal event DMMOs?
No, they shouldn't. It is a non-legal event, but it's the volume of work that's going to be the real issue. So no, thankfully we don't have to go through the legal event process, but there is a lot of notification and topping and tailing and things like that. So it's just going to be a big project for us.
Simon.
Vanessa, could you expand your comments in relation to Thorncombe and particularly in relation to timescales, etc.?
Was this the case waiting to go to the Planning Inspectorate?
Could you make a comment in relation to timescales in relation to Thorncombe?
Was this the case that is waiting to go to the Planning Inspectorate? We have several cases in Thorncombe at the moment.
And would you like to comment on those, please?
Right, okay, if you bear with me a moment, I will just have a look at the information. So We have footpath 94 and footpath 106 Thorncombe at Gachet Farm waiting to go to the planning inspectorate, because we've had an objection to that. I think that one. Bear with me just a moment. I just need to look back through the slides. It's on the list. I can't say exactly when it will go. We do try and prioritise public path orders, obviously, because of the nature of them and the fact that, you know, someone is basically paying for this. Let me just have another look at my notes. Oh, sorry, I stand corrected. There's no objection to that. The order itself needs to be modified to include limitations. There are 2 bridges on the route which need to be added into the legal order. Otherwise, in Thorncombe, the update, let me just have a look. We've had one confirmed recently, footpath 48 in Thorncombe, near Holditch. That was confirmed, and that one is completed. I don't want to spend ages going through my notes at the moment. I'm happy to send you an update if that's more acceptable.
That would be perfectly acceptable. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll do that then.
Yes, Paul.
You mentioned definitive map statements, Vanessa, which reminds me that something like a couple of years ago, we heard something about someone in Whitehall had said that in general principle, definitive map statements should be available online to the public. And has there been any progress in actually making that happen?
The short answer to that is no. I don't recall that. However, obviously, the more information we can make available to people, the better. The problem we would have is distinguishing between the sealed definitive statement, which is obviously the legal document, and then the working copy, which is the one which is more up to date and has more information on it. And making that clear to people would be important. But I have to say, it's something that's some way down our list at the moment.
I apologise for dropping that one on you, and I also apologise for the fact that I can't remember exactly where this statement came from. But I think the principle was, yes, people interested in these issues ought to be able to just go in online rather than having to traipse into County Hall to see the definitive map statement.
Yes, well, we do get quite a lot of queries asking for various information, and we usually actually email people copies and extracts of whatever it is they need rather than making them traipse into County Hall, because it's really not convenient for most people to do so, and people like to have electronic copies of things, so we tend to deal with it in that way. But I agree with you, if something is available online, people can access it themselves in their own time and get the information they need. So it would be something that ultimately we would aim to do.
Okay, thank you. If I could just raise a couple of issues. The footpath number 74, Portland, possible upgrading that Southall Road to Western Street along the old railway line. Have I got the right? T526. Sorry. Do you know if that's going in as a bridleway now? That was the one where we had a number of user evidence forms.
Yes. Yeah. Sue, the case officer, is still working on that. So we will hopefully be able to let you know shortly. She's on leave at the moment for the Easter holidays, but she'll be back soon, and then we can give you an update.
Right. And the other one is Britview Road, West Bay. leaning at the moment?
The investigation is ongoing. We have had well over 100 user evidence forms for that. I don't think many of them are for bridleway use, but Barbara is in the process of working through all the data and preparing charts and graphs and things like that. So that's going to be an ongoing case for a good few months yet before we're able to turn around and say whether or not we think it should be recorded as a bridleway.
Okay, are you suggesting we have another call for evidence for cycling and equestrian use?
I can't say without talking to Barbara about it. I haven't discussed it with her in the last couple of weeks, so I don't know. I know she's just tying up another case that she's been working on at the moment, so I don't know if she's had a chance to go through it all fully. But there's no harm if it's not a lot of effort for you to post something, then that's fine. As I said, we do have a lot of forms, but I don't know how many of them relate to bridleway or cycling use.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. Are there any more comments from the forum? Yes, Simon.
In relation to both Portland, especially, and West Bay, I think it would be helpful if we could, in due course, have email updates to all members of the forum.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for your report, Vanessa.
Thank you.
I think it's a convenient moment. Do we wish to take a comfort break? 10 minutes? Give the stenographer a chance to ease the hands. Right, so if we come back at, say, past, or just a bit after. Right, thank you, everyone. Very much. Okay, thank you very much. We'll now go to item 6, which is the England Coast Path. We've got a response from the Secretary of State, Rebecca Powell. Janet, would you like to read through?
Yeah, sorry, we thought this had been circulated to everybody, but I don't think it has been. So you haven't seen a reply from Rebecca Powell? No, right, okay. This was the reply to the chairman from Rebecca Powell, who is the Minister for Nature. Dear Philip, thank you for your letter of 4th of January to the Secretary of State about the outstanding stretches of the King Charles III England Coast Path in Dorset. I'm replying as the Minister responsible for this policy area. As you are likely aware, the KC3 ECP proposals are within scope of a European Court judgment in April 2018, known colloquially as People over Wind. The judgment affected how Natural England could assess the impact of proposals on European protected sites. Consequently, NE has revised the processes it follows in undertaking habitats regulation assessments for any proposed stretch of the coast path, which might have an impact on a European protected site. NE is working hard with local authorities to propose a suitable route on the path east of Lulworth Cove, which will be sent to DEFRA when the proposals are complete. The updated assessments and inspectorate reports for Kimmeridge to Highcliffe, Lyme Regis and Rufus Castle are with DEFRA and will be submitted to the Secretary of State, who will consider them alongside the original proposals. The need to undertake this review process and the time taken to formulate a compliant approach has caused considerable delays to decision making on relevant stretches. DEFRA officials are aiming to submit all remaining stretches of path to the Secretary of State this year, so that's 2024, including the outstanding stretches along the Dorset coast, which we expect to submit in the second half of 2024. I am currently focused on working with officials on progressing the approval process for the remaining unapproved stretches of the path across the country. In the meantime, work continues around the country on the many approved stretches of the path. I understand your desire to complete the KC3 ECP in Dorset so that the public can experience benefits from increasing their access to nature. Officials would like to maintain contact with you on any further progression on the outstanding stretches along the Dorset coast, and we will notify you once it has been approved by the Secretary of State and published on gov.uk. So that's it.
A typical letter from a minister. Fiona.
I just wondered if it's possible to see where those particular routes are. Are they somewhere?
Yeah, if you look on, it's on their website. I'll send the link round.
Paul.
Fairly early in that letter, there was a short paragraph that implied that for one section, a revised route was being prepared, which logically we ought to be being consulted on before it goes to the minister. Is that the way you read it or not?
Yeah, this definitely says at one point. Sorry, it definitely says at one point that the proposals will be put to the Secretary of State, who will consider them alongside original proposals. So that implies a change of route.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and that's my reading of it. But one would have, based on an earlier precedent, you would have thought that we would be being shown the new route and invited to comment on it before it went to the Secretary of State rather than afterwards.
Yeah. Shall I try and make contact with Natural England rather than DEFRA, because I think that's the easier way in.
And whilst we're in this area, in the last set of minutes, we seem to have been told that on the one hand, we were being told that the idea of an inland alternative route round the back of the army ranges was been abandoned. But it then went on to say, RG thought NE had resolved this. And so I still don't understand. Are we getting an alternative route? And if so, when can we see it, please?
I think they're just keeping all balls in the air. That's my reading of the letter.
I've got.
Well, say what one bit of it, many does say no, they're not. The other bit implies yes, they are. I think we need to just understand: is it happening or isn't it?
Yeah.
I've got a contact at Natural England, so I'll try them again.
Okay. I think all we can do is note the letter. Right. We'll move on to item 7, which is a BCP local plan consultation. Would you like to start on this? Andy?
I'm not in the team that deal with the LTP and the local transport plan, but just primarily it's don't forget it's a joint consultation between Dorset Council and BCP, so it's a joint local transport plan. And if you look on the, obviously go onto the website, BCP Council and Dorset Council working together to develop a new local transport plan. And the plan sets out the transport policy that will influence the different options that are used to move around Dorset safely, efficiently and sustainably for years to come. So as it says there, this will be a joint plan designed and managed by BCP and Dorset councils using the results of the wide-reaching engagement survey to inform the process.
Sorry, this is the local plan, not
Oh, sorry.
local transport plan.
Sorry. Well, that's equally as good though. So local transport plan, but equally, sorry, it's my fault.
No problem. No problem. Okay.
By the timetable on this.
Sorry, I was going on the wrong plan, so
Yeah.
I can't help you on the local plan.
Yeah.
I let Graham.
I have no idea what's going on.
Because it says, well, it says on the website, it says on the website that the consultation is in January 22, and indeed it was, and then it will be adopted in about April 24, which I think that's where we are now. But aren't we being sent another consultation document?
Yes,
And
we're just here talking about the BCP local plan, and that is out for consultation at the moment. What you very kindly did a response for the LAF on an early stage of this, but this is the formal consultation on the draft LAF for BCP, the draft local plan for BCP. It's out for consultation now.
Okay.
3rd of May. Yes, 3rd of May.
Right.
So the reason that it's on the agenda is because we responded at an early stage when they were drawing all the information together that they needed to prepare a local plan. They've now prepared a draft local plan, and now they're doing the formal consultation on that. So because we responded early on in the process, I kind of assumed that we would want to say something at this stage. And the reason that it's on the agenda is to decide somebody needs to take the lead on doing that, because we can't do it sitting around a table like this, or even doing it by email exchanges. Someone needs to draft something and circulate it to the full meeting, and we can then comment on it. But it's hopeless to say to a group of people like this, I know this from bitter experience elsewhere, it's no good saying, please send me your comments on this. You need to have somebody who drafts something to start with and then invite people to comment on that.
Well, since I looked at it in the first place, would you like me to look at it again?
That's so kind of you. Yes.
Personally, I don't think our views were taken that strongly into account from my reading of it.
Well, I'll look at it again.
Share it.
Oh God, yes,
Just have a quick.
Yes,
yes, do. I'll share the original comments.
Yeah,
and
the link to the actual BCP website where it is on the agenda.
I found that link didn't work, so I just went in.
All right. Well, if you go to the BCP website, you can find it.
Yeah, I'll find it. I found it last night. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Or sometimes.
Right. So we'll move on to item number 8, which is member feedback.
Just before we leave.
Sorry, Paul.
Just before we leave this one, if you go back to the original consultation notice, it covered both the local plan and the community infrastructure levy revision.
Yes,
and very recently they have said, no, we're holding the CIO consultation for later. Not quite sure why, but anyway, the two are being decoupled. And it is desirable that we do pick up on the CIO plan when it hits consultation stage, because we have over the years put a lot of effort into trying to persuade councils that access improvements are a legitimate use of their CIL piggyback. And from what Pip was saying earlier on, it looks as if, yes, in this particular area, there has been some improvement on that. But I think we do need to look at the CIL consultation when it comes out and make sure that we have banged the access drum with adequate vigour.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I'll now move on to item number 8, member feedback from associated groups. What have members got to feedback on in the meeting?
I represent the LAF on the Dorset National Landscape, no longer the AONB, but we haven't met since the last time the LAF met, so I haven't got anything to report there.
Fiona?
Yeah, I represent us on the local nature partnership. Because of the very big push on nature recovery, there's 2 schemes, one at a Dorset scale, which Dorset Council, yeah, I suppose BCP must be doing somewhere, which is around a strategy for all of Dorset for local nature recovery, and that's a land use planning exercise. And I do wonder whether access has got put into that process, because I feel it probably should be, because it will, in the end, deliver land use change, which has implications for access. And the second one is a slightly smaller scale process where, under elms, groups of farmers can put in for landscape scale pilots where they deliver change on the ground for nature. And again, because access is now got payments under the new elm scheme, I'm wondering whether perhaps we should ask the 2 councils whether they are having conversations on their own local nature recovery strategy and access, and B, whether there's some way we could write to those people starting the project scale schemes to say, don't forget access. Is that something that we as a LAF would do, or is that something that you do at an organisational level? And it might give opportunity for more permissive access.
It's something
and rights away.
We're aware of in the British Horse Society. I wondered if you're doing anything on that, Graham, at all from the council point of view.
Not from my department,
Okay.
or my little fiefdom of North Dorset anyway. Possibly within the natural environment team, they are with the local nature recovery stuff. But yeah, nothing that's filtered down to me specifically, I'm sorry to say.
Right, thank you.
How would we progress that?
I would as well,
Just
because it
signposting
can
it.
make some links. You know, where we've got
Going to Bridget Betts as the
Bridget Betts.
Yeah, person on the who heads up the national environment team, and she'll kind of know what's coordinating it.
Okay.
If I draft something to Bridget.
Okay, thank you. Right, so yes, Simon.
This is only this is a matter to note, and a decision by the member for Chelsea, Felicity Buchan, in relation to a solar farm in the National Landscape area adjacent to the Macmillan Way at Cruxton, which is near Maiden Newton, which was approved by the planning inspector, and the minister has decided it is inappropriate, and it's worthy of note because it's on the Macmillan Way. For those who haven't picked up on this, it's quite interesting news.
Okay, thank you.
I've only just begun to represent the LAF on the Cranbourne Chase landscape area, and so I just had one meeting to get to know you with Linda Nunn, who I think CEO chair, who would value coming to talk to the LAF on a new long distance route that they're planning.
Yes. If we note that, and can you send out an invitation? Okay, thank you. Right, we'll move on to item number 9, ratifications. They're fairly straightforward. The local transport plan response, the active travel infrastructure plan response, and the comments on felling licenses for 2024. You'll have seen them previously circulated, so it's just to formally ratify that. I think we.
Yeah, it is just because they've gone in. There's nothing you can do about them now.
Yeah.
But I think it was circulated to everybody. We did get a message from Councillor Hadley on BCP, who did everybody see this? Yeah, you're nodding. Yeah, where he gave his apologies for being unable to attend today, and he said, "I have read the 2 LAF comments papers on active travel consultation for ratification," and goes on to make lots of really interesting comments. But he says at one point, he says, "I'm concerned by the notions around right of way as predominantly leisure routes. That is great, but many people do commute or undertake other utility journeys on them," which, yes, it is absolutely true. But the LAF's remit is specifically a recreational one, is it not? So I think maybe the emphasis is in any response we made slightly geared towards the recreational use of public rights of way rather than the utilitarian use.
I think he made some very highly personal comments.
Yeah, but I haven't done anything about acknowledging the fact that he's made those comments, which I should really do since I prepared those 2 sets of comments. But he's a councillor, so he's able to make them to his authority off his own bat, really.
They do cut against the ethos of what Sustrans are trying to do with paths for everybody, and also where we're trying to get multi-use as a concept going through. But as I said, everybody's entitled to their own views, and those are singular views. Okay, so we duly note the fact that those responses have gone in, which brings me to item number 10, which is any other business. So if I go around the table, if we have anything, I'll start Graham's end. No, coming around to Fiona.
Oh, Nikki won.
Nikki, sorry.
One more thing about a future agenda item. I put it around a suggestion around regarding SANGs, which, as everybody knows, is a very large amount of access provision across both Dorset and the BCP area. And so I thought it would be useful to have a presentation from the planning folk who deal with deciding on where the SANGs will be and what they will encompass, and so I just think it'd be really, really useful at this point.
Do we have a specific contact in mind? Graham.
The person for Dorset Council is currently on maternity leave. We're returning in about September. So we could either arrange it for her return or try and get some information that our member of staff over in East Dorset, who looks after the SANGs, isn't necessarily involved in the planning stages, but obviously the after the fact management, to come and talk. No reason why not.
Okay, if you could note that, Gemma, for an invitation. I think Ellen's got somebody in mind. Anything else,
Yeah.
Janet?
Yeah. Paul has previously asked on numerous occasions if we could have somebody from the Forestry Commission or whichever branch of the Forestry Commission it is that deals with this to talk about access in woodland planting schemes and related issues. And I have actually managed to make contact with somebody who would be able to do that. And he is willing to come to the next LAF meeting, which I said would be at some date in July, although I don't think we've agreed the exact date yet. But yes, he's definitely up for doing it. So as I've actually got somebody lined up, he can definitely be a speaker at the July meeting.
Okay. We will note that attendee. We're getting a large number of people attending the next meeting, so we'll bring him along, but we'll have to make sure we have a fair.
Well, unless we wait for the Sang lady until the Dorset Council lady's back from maternity leave.
That might be a good idea.
Yeah, she won't be going anywhere, so to speak. So yeah.
So that'll be for the November meeting.
November. Right. So moving down the table, Paul.
We've talked many times in the past about the ELMS scheme, which has always proved very intangible and difficult to get our hands around. And two things have been said recently that suggest that it is now at long last starting to crystallise. And if we are to ensure that the worthy burghers of Dorset are getting value out of it in terms of access improvements, we ourselves, I think, really do need to understand a bit more than I, for one, do about what the package that's currently on the table is. So I guess I'm afraid it's a request for another presentation at the next meeting. Who you go to, I don't know, because I think the LMS as such is being operated by the Rural Payments Agency. Well, a bit of a black hole to me, but that's just fundamentally, I think, we need to understand what the package that is in front of landowners if they wish to take advantage of it.
Yes.
The technical document I can circulate the link to, it lists all the payments that are available. So if that's of help, that can at least.
It lists the payments.
Yeah.
I presume that same document goes out to all farmers, and it's just to make sure they get it flagged up for their notice, so they read it. It's a very wordy document.
Isn't the important thing not just the payments, but how effectively the money, which obviously is a finite pot, is allotted? Because obviously it's no good if somebody puts a piece of permissive access on their land and it's a piece that's never ever going to be used by anybody, whereas 10 miles down the road we have somewhere that's absolutely crying out for it, as in terms of user numbers. And so I think that's really the important thing, is the implementation and how the money is going to be allotted.
You make a very good point.
Missing link to me seems to be the map, which shows what we need. And that is the thing that is sitting in the ROEP, or was originally, but is not being updated. It's having that opportunity map that
we need our wish
list the farmers where we might want them to have.
But doesn't Natural England also have a role to play, or not totally?
Yeah,
not at all.
They
So I
are
don't know.
clients.
Yes. So it's almost like Natural England and the ROEP coming together, isn't it?
We will have our ROEP for the next meeting. The long promised run. Son.
I do wonder if you could seek advice internally within Dorset Council. At the end of last week, I was out on a Dorset Council farm. There are more than 40 Dorset Council farms, about 6,000 or 7,000 acres. And I just wonder if it might be appropriate if you were to approach somebody in the County Farms estate team who would have a good working knowledge of elms, and to have them perhaps attend the next meeting. That would be a suggestion and perhaps an alternative to approaching somebody from the CLA or the NFU, but to actually have somebody from the County Farms Estate team.
Right. Okay, that's something for Gemma to note. Good point.
That's a chap called David Haynes.
David Haynes.
Yeah. And the County Farms team kind of amount to 1.5 people. So David Haynes or Jenny Stubbs, but David's your main person.
Okay. Right, an invitation to David Haynes then. Gemma, do we have a date for the next meeting that we diaried?
I think we have an approximate one, or at least I think we have a placeholder booking at Dorset Council, but I'm not sure if that's been agreed between Dorset Council and BCP where the next meeting will be held.
Right, what was the provisional date that we had?
I'm just looking.
Didn't we decide that it would be too unwieldy to try and get to BCP?
We did, yes. Unfortunately, Upton Country Park, great idea. Unfortunately, even internally we have to pay, so the cost, and the only places really would be Bournemouth Town Hall, which I appreciate is very difficult for most of you to attend. So no, I think we have to stick here as the sensible location.
Also, we've got a room booking on Thursday, the 25th of July.
Right. So next meeting will be Thursday, the 25th of July at 10 o'clock. Okay. Right. So with no further business, I will call the meeting closed at 12 minutes past 12. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance.